How many games will Jacksonville Jags win in 2025? What's going on, Duval? It's your boy and Jags fans. It's your boy Mayo Jones here, and we back at it with another NFL record prediction. And this time we'll be doing an NFL record prediction for the Jacksonville Jags for a 2025 NFL season. Give you my game by game analysis, my game by game thoughts, see which games I think the Jags will win and which games I think the Jags will lose. So before I give you my record prediction for Jacksonville Jaguars for 2025 NFL season, don't forget to put a thumbs up to like the video, subscribe to my channel for more options, and comment down your opinion below to see how far you think the Jags, how good you think they'll be. Do you think Jacksonville will take a step forward this year and make the playoffs? Do you think they'll win the AFC South, or you think they miss out on the playoffs again? Just let me know in the comments section below what you guys think. So basically, getting things started, week 1 versus the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, this is going to be a fun game to watch. This is an even coaching matchup. Now, this game can go either way. Now, I like to say both these two teams were bad last year, especially. Both offenses were kind of similar to each other, but Jaguars were kind of more explosive on offense than the Panthers because the Panthers' offense, like at the beginning of the year, couldn't really get things going. But their offensive line of Carolina is pretty solid. Their defense, is a little sketchy. Jags' defense is sketchy too, especially against the pass. Both these two teams were like one of the worst pass defenses in football. But Jaguars had a better run defense, and the Panthers' run defense was really bad last year. So, yeah. And also, you got at least 2 first-round wide receivers playing against each other too, like Travis Hunter and T-Mac, yeah. This can go either way. I think this game right here is going to be very close, and I think it's going to be competitive. But I can see Carolina winning. But if this game was in Carolina, I might lean towards Carolina. But the game's in Jacksonville, so I'm going to lean towards Jacksonville to win this game just because I think the Jags, the home field advantage, the Duval Stadium is like the difference maker. And I just don't really think the Panthers, especially, with the lack of their pass defense, I feel like this is going to be too much for the Jags' explosive offense to handle, especially the Jags are very explosive on offense. And I think Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter will be a problem for the Panthers secondary because the Panthers secondary, it's young, but they struggle against good receivers. So that's something you got to count in mind. So that's what you got something to know of. So the Panthers against the pass do struggle against the pass and cover and struggle against wide receivers. And I feel like Trevor Lawrence can pick them apart. And I think they'll find a way to control the game, keep Bryce Young on the sidelines. So yeah. But I just think if Jacksonville, if they can get a pass rush on Bryce Young, make life difficult on him, then that's possible Jags can win. And they could blow the Panthers out. So yeah, I like the Jags here to win that game. Week 2 against Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Bengals will win this game. Here's why. Because, the Bengals, unlike the Jags, are very explosive on offense. But the Bengals defense is a little sketchy. Now, because if the Bengals, if they don't get a pass rush on Trevor Lawrence, then the Jags offense is probably going to be explosive and they're going to stay balanced. And that's going to allow them to avoid sacks, turnovers, and all that. But the Bengals secondary is kind of a little bit suspect though. Because if they had corners, I think they can find a way to cover the Jazz receivers. So I feel like as long as their defense, doesn't really give up big plays to Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas, I think they should be fine. And then if they can get a pass rush on Trevor Lawrence, make life difficult on him, that'll be possible. And also on top of that, the Bengals offense is one of the best in football. And Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in football. And, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are just going to be too much for your secondary to handle. I just don't see how the Jags are going to be able to cover the Bengals, and Burrow will just pick you apart. So yeah, and on top of that, the Bengals are at home, and I just think they're just a much more complete team, and they just got the better quarterback. So yeah, I think I like the Bengals here in a shootout, but this could be a fun game to watch. It could be an offensive game, but yeah, I got the Bengals winning. Next game, week 3 against the Houston Texans. I think the Jags will beat the Texans because I just think, the Jags, I just have a feeling the weakness of the Texans is their offensive line. I think the Jags will beat the Texans once just because, the Jags typically play the Texans hard. But the weakness of the Texans is their offensive line on the road facing against a good pass rush. And I just feel like that, that the Jags defensive line is going to give the Texans offense tons of fits. And, I feel like Trevor Lawrence is good at torching defenses. I think he'll find a way to at least make some plays against a Texans defense that's good. I think they can possess the ball to keep their offense on balance. So yeah, I think the Jags will beat the Texans once, but I think they'll win the first game at home. Then week 4 against San Francisco 49ers. This is a Florida team traveling to California. I actually got the Niners beating the Jags, and here's why. Now, the 49ers, are just like the more complete team, and they got the better coaching staff. They're at home, and, Robert Saleh has done a really good job against the Jags offense. And, I feel like the Niners, they have a really good offensive and defensive lines, but I know the weakness of the Niners is their offensive line. But I feel like the Niners can run the ball. They can throw the ball at you. Like Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, as long as they're healthy, they could be a problem for your secondary. They got Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings as well. Their pass rush will totally give Trevor Lawrence tons of fits because I don't think the Jags' offensive line is that good, and I don't think they can match up well with the Niners on paper really well because the Niners' defensive line is, it's for real and it's elite. Their secondary could be a little bit suspect, but it's solid enough. So as long as they don't really give up big plays to Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter, I think they'll be okay there. But I think the Niners, find a way to win this game. And I feel like Kyle Shanahan will have answers for the Jags defense as well. So, yes. So I think the Niners will find a way to win this game, but I think it will be close though. But I wouldn't be shocked that the Niners just blow them out. So yeah. Then week 5 against the Kansas City Chiefs. On a Monday night in Jacksonville, this game right here is interesting. It could go either way. I could see the Jags winning this game, but the only way if Jacksonville can win this game is that if their offense can find a way to move the ball against the Chiefs defense and the Chiefs defense starts to slip up a little bit. But if Jacksonville's defense can force a bad game from Mahomes, there's a chance that Jacksonville can win. But this game could be super close. I feel like Jacksonville can pull off an upset, but I'm going with the Chiefs here because I just feel like the Chiefs are just a more complete team. They have the better quarterback, better coaching staff, and Spags, has done a really good job against the Jags offense. I feel like he's gonna find a way to confuse that, and I feel like he's gonna have answers for the Jags offense, and I just don't really think that. And I feel like Andy Reid will have answers for the Jags defense as well because even though the Chiefs do have young receivers and they got Travis Kelce, I still think Mahomes is just gonna pick you apart. He's just gonna come to your building and just pick you apart. So yeah. And the Chiefs defense is very aggressive. And I think, and I feel like their secondary can find a way to at least, cover Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter. So yeah. I can see this being a defensive game. So yeah, so basically, I wouldn't rule out Jacksonville winning, but I think the Chiefs will find a way to come out on top. Next game, week 6 against the Seattle Seahawks. This is another game that can go either way, but I'm going to go with the Jags to win this game because I just think the Jags, they just got the better quarterback. Like, I just feel like, the Jags, pass rush could be the difference maker in this game, which I think they can give the Seahawks offensive line tons of fits because Seattle's offensive line is nothing special, and I think your defensive line can take advantage of that. Plus, the Seahawks do have a great defense, though, but I think, Jacksonville, will have, I feel like Lawrence and the Jags offense will have answers for it. I think they will. Like, there's a good chance Seahawks can win, but I just think the Jags, will win this game because I think they're just going to be the more explosive offense in in this game, and Seattle's offense is just like not explosive. So yeah, I think Jacksonville will find a way to win that game. Then week 7, they have to play versus the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, this game is in London. Now, this is another game that can go either way. Now, we understand Jacksonville does play really well in London, and they do show some fight. But I don't know. I call this a trap game, though. But, I'm going to come back to that one because that one's a tricky one. So then you got the bye week. Then after the bye week, they got to play against the Las Vegas Raiders. Um, Obviously, this is another game that can go either way. Now, some people could be picking the Jaguars to win because I feel like the Jags are a better because the Jags could be a better version of the Raiders. But I could totally see it happening though because the Raiders are interesting though. The Raiders got a good quarterback and a great coaching staff. Their offensive line's average. They got some like weapons on offense like Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and Ashton Genty. Their defense is good, but their defensive line is solid, but the backhand of their defense is a little sketchy. Maybe Trevor Lawrence, there's a chance Trevor Lawrence can pick him apart. I don't know. This is tricky, but I'm probably going to say Raiders for now. I could totally change my mind. I think the Raiders, they're at home in this game, and, Vegas is kind of a tricky place to play at a little bit. And I feel like the Raiders' defensive line can totally give Trevor Lawrence some fits. But, you know, I think Geno Smith, even though the Raiders offense, they don't have a lot of explosive offensive weapons other than Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty. I think Geno Smith can just pick them apart. Like, I feel like he can do enough to throw the ball through the air against your secondary. So yeah. And also the Raiders are at home. So yeah. I like the Raiders here. Week 10 against the Texans. I think they'll split with the Texans, like I said. So I think they'll lose that game in Houston. I mean, Houston's just a more complete team and have the better quarterback, better coach and staff. They're at home. I mean, better defensive game. So, yeah. Then next game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, this is another game that can go either way. You got LA coming to Florida because that's a long travel. But you know what? I'm gonna leave it as a tie, and I'm gonna come back to that one because that's a tricky game. Then week 12 against the Arizona Cardinals. I'm gonna go with the Cardinals to win this game because I think the Cardinals had a really good offseason. They did improve their defense a little bit, and I think the Cardinals could be a sneaky team this year. The Cardinals, I just feel like the Cardinals defense, can totally get after Trevor Lawrence, and I feel like Gannon can have a good game plan against him, against the Jags offense. And the Cardinals do have some explosive weapons on offense like Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, they got James Conner. Like the Cardinals, they can run the ball, they can throw the ball. So I don't think the Jags defense will have an answer for Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. I think Kyler Murray can pick them apart. And he can scramble, make some plays. I feel like the Cardinals offense will do much to move the ball against your defense. And Kyler Murray can do enough to throw the ball through the air against your secondary. So yeah. But I feel like the only way the Jazz can win this game is that their defense can force a bad game from Kyler. And, if their offense can control the game, keeping Kyler off the field and all that. But I think the Cardinals offense will control the line of scrimmage. They'll control time possession, keep Trevor Lawrence on the sidelines and all that. So yeah. I think the Cardinals will win this game, especially the games in Arizona where it could be tricky and Kyler's a challenge. So yeah, that's why I think the Cardinals will win. Then week 13 against Tennessee Titans, because they played them in week 18 and week 13. So I think they're gonna lose to the Titans once this year, because sometimes the Titans always play the Jags hard. So I'm gonna say they lose to the Titans. The first game, because the game's in Tennessee, and I feel like Cam Ward, he's gonna show some promise here, and he could be playing well at the end of the year where he's much more comfortable and all that. So yeah, I think the Titans will win this game at home. Week 14, they play against the Colts at home. I think they'll beat the Colts because, the Colts, I don't know who the quarterback's going to be. It's going to be Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. Who knows? The Jags, they always find a way to win at home against the Colts. And on top of that, the Jags are just the much more complete team and have the better quarterback. And they're just a more explosive offense than the Colts, because I don't think the Colts' offense is good, but their defense could be better than the Jags. And they could have a much more better roster than the Jags. So, yeah. So, I think the Jags will beat the Colts once. And then they played them in week 17. So, I think they're going to lose to the Colts the second time, because usually the Colts sometimes play the Jags tough, every year. Because even last year, the Colts did beat them. So, yeah. And then week 15 against the New York Jets. Obviously, I got the Jaguars beating the Jets because, the Jets are probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league. They have Justin Fields, who's one of the worst stars in the league as a pure passer. Their offensive line's a little shaky. Their defense is good, but they're probably going to be worn out on how bad their offense will probably be, because Justin Fields, he likes holding to the ball. He makes mistakes, and I don't think the Jets are going to be able to have the passing game to get after the Jags secondary. But I feel like as long as the Jags don't really give up big plays to Garrett Wilson, I think they should be okay. And I think they can get a pass rush on Justin Fields to make life difficult on the Jets offense. So yeah, and especially the Jags are at home, and the Jets got a rookie coaching staff as well, along with Jacksonville. And on top of that, the Jags are just the much more complete team and are a better version of the Jets. They have the better quarterback in Lawrence. I think Lawrence is better than Fields. And they're at home, and they got the better passing game, and they're the more explosive offense. So yeah, as much as how good the Jets defense is, I think Lawrence can pick them apart. So yeah. Then week 16 against the Denver Broncos, I think the Broncos will win this game, just because the Broncos, they're at home, and playing in Denver is tricky, and the Broncos defense is one of the best in football. They led the league in sacks last year. So I think their defense could totally give the Jags offensive line and Trevor Lawrence tons of fits. They have a great secondary that can really cover against the Jags receivers. I don't think the Jags defense will have an answer for Cortland Sutton or Evan Ingram. So yeah, I think the Broncos, I don't think the Jags are going to be able to run the ball as much on the Broncos. So yeah. Especially the Broncos, defense is one of the best. But I think it will be close, though. But I think the Broncos find a way to win this game, because they're at home and they're just a more complete team and have the better coaching staff. So, yeah. So I think Vance Joseph is really going to give the Jags offense and Trevor Lawrence a lot of problems. And Sean McPayton will find a way to scheme things up offensively against a bad Jaguars defense. So, yeah, I think the Broncos will win that game. Then last game, week 18 against the Titans. Like I said, you split with the Titans. So I think the Jags will win that game here at home. So basically, That leads the Jags at 7-9-2. So that leads to at 7-9-2. No, actually 6-9-2. So yeah, so that leads to the Jags at 6-9-2. So basically, to the LA games they have left here. But I think Jacksonville, is probably gonna at least win one of these LA games. But I don't think they're gonna win both. I don't think they're gonna lose both. They're gonna win one of them. They're gonna lose one of them. Like, I feel like it's gonna be fair. But that London. I mean, week 11 is tricky because I kind of remember that playoff game from a few years ago where the Chargers had a league and then Jacksonville ended up coming back on them. Like, yeah, like this game can totally go either way. Like, I could totally see both teams winning. I could totally see the Chargers winning because the Chargers, can match the Jags' physicality. But you know what, though? I felt this game would be close and fun. But I am going to go with the Jags here. For some reason, I just got the Jags beating the Chargers. Here's why. Now, the Jags totally do play the Chargers pretty well. Even a couple years ago, they did in the playoffs. And then a few years ago in the regular season, the Jags, destroyed them and put a 30 burger on them. But I think the Jags can match up well with the Chargers really good. They can match the Chargers' physicality. Now, the weaknesses of the Chargers is probably their ability on defense, especially their cornerback group. And I think that the Chargers, I don't think their defense will have an answer for Brian Thomas or Travis Hunter because I think Trevor Lawrence can pick them apart. And also, he can do enough. He can do much to throw the ball through the air against the Chargers defense, against their secondary. And, Jazz got better weaponry. And I think their defense can force a bad game from Justin Herbert and make life difficult on him as well. But anyway, the Chargers can run the ball better with Greg Roman. I know they will. But their offensive line is much improved. Despite all those things, despite all that, I still think the Jags defense can get after Herbert and all that. But both these two teams don't have a great pass defense. But the Chargers are like last year. The Chargers defense was a lot better in Jacksonville. So yeah, but I think Jacksonville offensively can find a way to control the game, keep Herbert off the field, and I think that's going to lead to the Jags to win the game. Maybe they win by a field goal. Maybe they win by a game-winning touchdown. So yeah, I wouldn't rule out the Chargers winning. I think the Chargers have the better coaching staff. I think the Chargers are a much more better team from a talent standpoint. But I just have a feeling that Jacksonville will win because, a California team traveling to Florida in late November or mid-November is kind of an advantage for a Jacksonville victory. So that's why I think the Jags will win. And then week 7, I'm going to say the Rams are going to beat the Jags just because I think the Rams are the much more physical team, have the better coaching staff, they have the better quarterback. But I feel like as long as the Rams are healthy, I think they'll beat the Jags. I just think, Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, those guys are just going to be too much for your secondary to handle. And, both of the teams' secondary is a little sketchy because the Rams don't have a good cornerback group. Maybe Trevor Lawrence can do enough to expose that. But, yeah, but at the same time, the Rams, have a better defense in mind, which I don't really know if the Jags' offensive line is going to be ready for a pass rush, a good pass rush like the Rams. I think the Rams' defensive line is going to give Trevor Lawrence a lot of fits. So, yeah. But, yeah, the Jags are in London. I know it's a home game for them, but I just think the Rams are just a much more physical team and all that, and they'll find more ways to win at the line of scrimmage. But I feel like the only way if Jacksonville can win this game is that if their defense can force a bad game on Matthew Stafford, and then if they can find a way offensively to control the ball, keep Stafford off the field, and all that. But I think the Rams will win this matchup just because I just really think, they're just a much more talented team and all that. So, yeah, I think the Rams will win. But I wouldn't be shocked if Jacksonville won, and I'm not really ruling it out, but I think the Rams will win that game. So, basically, I have the Jags at 7-10, which that's could be an improvement from last year though. So basically, as you look at the teams that the Jags got to play in their schedule, it's pretty tough. Um, it's difficult because they have to play the Bengals. They play a first place schedule. Well, they got to play the NFC West team that's most competitive. They got to play the Niners, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and the Rams. They got to play a first place schedule in the Chiefs. They got to play the Chargers. They play the Texans twice and the Broncos. So, yeah, and the only good teams they don't play is the Bills, the Ravens, the Steelers, and, they don't play the Cowboys, the Eagles, Commanders. Then they don't play the NFC North, which is the Packers, Lions, Vikings, and then the Bucks. And then, yeah, and that's about it. So 7-10, 8-9 sounds about right for Jacksonville. I can see them being as good as 9-8, 10-7, but I feel like 10-7 will be their floor if their defense can start to get back to where it was and Trevor Lawrence get back to where he was. But the question is, will he get back to where he was? I don't know. Now, I thought the Jazz could be dealing with a lack of weaponry because I'm not sure if Travis Hunter is going to be able to play both positions because he's only a wide receiver and cornerback. But I feel like their offensive line could be a little bit iffy headed towards a season where they could be losing to teams with a good pass rush. And their defense, I feel like it could be a little bit up and down, but it's just average, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to carry a team like it was last year. I feel like that, they really need a better defense coordinator. And I don't think the Jags defense is just going to be as good as it was. And they're probably going to be able to struggle in a shootout. And I think they'll be able to lose and they could lose some shootouts with some good teams. Like, for example, like I could see them losing to the Chargers and such like that. Or I could see them losing to the Seahawks or the Panthers. And I can either see them beating teams like the Rams or the Cardinals. They can even beat the Colts twice or the Titans twice. Like, I can really see it happening though. Like, the Jags, like I said, like I think they're gonna at least win one of the LA games. Like maybe they can beat the Rams and lose to the Chargers, or maybe they lose to the Chargers and beat the Rams, or maybe. So like yeah, so most of those games I can see the Jags winning and losing. So I feel like 7-10, 8-9 seems about right for the Jaguars. I just have questions about the coaching. I have questions about the defense as well and the offensive lack of weaponry they have. So, yeah, I just think the Jags, I feel like they're going to be an interesting team this year, but I don't think this is a year that they're going to be that much better in 2025. I think I like to say that, give the Jags at least one more year to get back in the playoffs. Because right now I have the Texans, winning the division. And I have the Jazz as the second best team in the AFC South. So, yeah. So that's all I have for you. 7-10 is my record prediction for the Jags. If you enjoy, you can put thumbs up to like the video. And so yeah, like if you disagree with me, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. This is Mayon Jones for Big Fan. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys later. Peace.